Okay, I think we'll kick off, and everyone who joins can just join us at a later stage. Thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to this very exciting webinar. We look forward to the discussions, and we also look forward to hearing from all of you. Just as a quick introduction, my name is Cindy Lee Kluter. I'm based in South Africa, and I'm part of the organizing and planning team for GEEP Africa. As you all are aware, GEEP is the Global Environmental Education Partnership, a network of networks that prioritize environmental education and climate literacy across the world. And I think it's a topic that, is so topical at the moment as COP28 is happening in Dubai, where all world leaders are looking at how do we actually contribute to a more climate just world where education plays a huge role in that. So just the focus for today's webinar, we are looking at transforming education across Africa and looking at the nexus of climate justice, social justice, and of course, artificial intelligence. As we move further in the world of development, AI is becoming a feature that's quite prominent, and we need to understand how we use that for an education lens. So we've got a couple of theme discussions that we will unpack today, and we would like for all of you to actually be involved in that. And because we are on the continent, we will look at the Agenda 2063, particularly looking at climate and social justice from an African perspective and an African context. And then looking at artificial intelligence in the face of, the climate emergency and education. We've got 3 speakers today that will engage us in these specific topics. Dr. Ravi Bola Adedoyan and Kerry McLean from South Africa. And I'll introduce each of them as we kind of hand over to their specific topics and their engagements. I would like to mention that, we could all learn from each other. So as the presenters are, going through their presentations, make sure that you note down all of your questions and you contribute to all of their conversations by making comments in the chat, sharing from your perspective, from your experience. As we are a learning community within the GEEP Global team and the GEEP Africa team, I think this is important for all of us to contribute to this conversation. So initially, I just want to say a big thank you to all of our speakers today, as well as our North American Association for Environmental Education team. They are the secretariat for the GEEP Global network, and without them, we wouldn't be able to make this possible. So a big thank you to all of them. We want to be as inclusive as possible for this webinar. So just a few notifications. We want to hear from you. So have your say. Please use the chat for any questions, any comments that you have as people are walking through or presenting their sections. You can also note them down. There will be a session or a section for question and answer and comment at the end. But we won't take comments after each presentation has been done. So please just note your questions in the chat and we will definitely come to all of them. We also would like this webinar to be as inclusive as possible. So please use the closed caption notification or the what do you call this? The function, sorry, the function, closed captions function, if you would like to have translation as well as have subtitles as the presenters are speaking. And then, yeah, like I said, we'll type all of your questions in the chat section throughout the webinar. Use the closed caption function for translation as well as captions. We will be recording the webinar because a lot of people who wanted to join actually can't join today. And we would like to share this with them as well. So we hope that all of you are okay for this webinar to be recorded. So I think without further ado, I would like to hand over to Dr. Ravi Bola, who is an associate professor at the Mauritius Institute of Education. Ravi has got years of experience within education for sustainable development, particularly on the continent. We work with him very closely in Southern Africa, and I'm pretty sure that he's got lots of exciting but also thought-provoking information to like share with us. So Ravi, thanks, and over to you.
Thank you very much, Cindy. And thank you for GEEP for organizing this webinar. Okay, the focus of my presentation will be on education, but in the context of AU or Agenda 2063. Network. Sorry. Okay. Sorry. Cindy, maybe you can go. I think you, yeah. Okay. So I'm starting with the first slide, which is on Africa. And Africa, the world's second largest and second most populous continent, after Asia. It is famous for its beautiful places, including its savanna jungles and the Sahara Desert. I think many of you know. It represents about 20% of the Earth's land, and it has about 54 states. It has 5 regions, as you can see from the map of Africa. There's northern, southern, eastern, and western and central Africa. African nations cooperate through the establishment of African Union, which is headquartered in Addis Ababa. The population of, if you look at Africa, it represents about 18% of the world's population. And the population of Africa reached 1.2 billion in 2015 and is projected to grow rapidly, reaching 1.7 billion in 2030 and 3 billion in 2063. And its share of the global population will also increase to 29% in 2063. About 46% of Africa's labor force will be young people aged 15 to 34. That implies that there will be an average of 12.1 million of youth a year. Thus, Africa's youthful population structure makes Africa the most youthful continent with a significant and untapped youth potential for economic transformation. Africa is facing major challenges. Can you move to back? Africa is facing major challenges such as poverty. Many African countries grapple with high poverty rates due to issues like limited access to education, healthcare, and economic opportunities. Other challenges are political instability, conflict, violence, inadequate infrastructure, and lack of economic diversifications. The main environmental challenges include the triple planet crisis, that is climate change, loss of biodiversity, and pollution. Addressing these challenges often requires multifaceted approaches involving governmental policies, international cooperation, investment in infrastructures, healthcare, and most importantly, education and sustainable development strategies. Next. If you look at the left side of this slide, it shows that education stands as a powerful remedy for the array of challenges encountered by African nations, owing to its extensive influence on individuals, communities, and entire societies. And the new developments in education focuses on a range of aspects, including equity, sustainability, resilience, and adaptation. Though education is one of the major vehicles for development and economic transformation in Africa, it has its own challenges across Africa with respect to access to education, quality of education, and equity in education. Thus, any transformation in education in Africa requires thorough critical reflection on these 3 categories of challenges in Africa in education. Next. Now, if you look at this slide on the left side, it shows, if you look at the challenges with respect to access to education, we have many children across Africa still face barriers to accessing education, including inadequate infrastructure, long distances to schools, and cultural or economic obstacles. And if you look at the right side, I look at the diagram on the right side, the diagram shows that the share of out-of-school children in Africa by age group. It shows that despite progress in school inclusion, we still have relatively large proportion of children still out of school. For example, 53% of upper secondary school, 33% of lower secondary school, and 17% of for primary school. And with respect to challenges, with respect to quality of education, we have issues such as outdated curricula, lack of trained teachers, and limited resources often lead to disparities and inconsistencies in the quality of education across different regions of Africa. And if you look at the diagram, it again shows that the percentage of trained primary school teachers has decreased from 2012 to 2017. And we will see the same kind of trend for primary education. Lack of the number of trained teachers has reduced over the course of time. So there is a lacuna in the trained teachers in Africa. And the third challenges is with respect to equity in education. We will see there's gender disparities, unequal access for marginalized communities, and imbalance in educational funding that contribute to inequities in educational opportunities across Africa. If you look at the diagram, the African countries dedicate about less than 20% of their national budget to education. And about 1 in 3 countries that dedicate less than 15% in education. So clearly there are challenges. The challenges to education are very visible in Africa. Now, so how is education transforming and shaping the future of Africa? If you look at this diagram, we will all agree that education is a catalyst for development, and transforming education is the key to unlocking the potential of individuals and societies, driving economic growth and fostering social cohesion. And the national development program of each country, each African nation or country in the continent is aligned with the Africa Agenda 23 and SDG 2030. Indeed, the Africa Agenda 2063 and the UN Sustainable Development Goals are the 2 major drivers to shape the future of Africa. Africa Agenda 2063 is a strategic framework for the socio-economic transformation of the continent over the next 50 years, with education playing a central role in achieving its goals. While SDG 2030 is a plan of action for people, planet, and prosperity, it also seeks to strengthen universal peace in larger freedom. Thus, the transformative power of education in both Agenda 2063 and SDG 2030 is helping to transform education in Africa, thus driving progress and achieving sustainable development. Next. Just go back, yes. Agenda 2063 is in fact Africa's blueprint and master plan for transforming Africa into the global powerhouse of the future. It is the continent's strategic framework that aims to deliver on its goal for inclusive and sustainable development, and is a concrete manifestation of Pan-African drive for unity, self-determination, freedom, progress, and collective prosperity pursued under Pan-Africanism and African Renaissance. In fact, when you look at the slide, you will see Africa Agenda 2063 has 7 aspirations, okay, with each with its own set of goals, which if achieved, will move Africa closer to achieving its vision for the year 2063. And you will see the seven aspirations that have been shown on the slide are driving actually Africa towards its economic transformation, its growth. But I want to highlight here on the number 1 and number 6, where it says it is focusing on a prosperous Africa based on inclusive growth and sustainable development. And the 6th one is an Africa whose development is people-driven, relying on the potential of African people, especially its women and youth, and caring for children. So it's making a lot of emphasis on youth because the continent is very youthful. Next. Okay, so just move at the back. Can you go back, Cindy? Yes. So, this diagram clearly shows, it gives us an idea about the structure of Agenda 2063, which includes the Constitutive Act, the African Union Vision, the 8 priority areas of the Solemn Declaration, the 7 African Aspiration for 2063, regional and continental frameworks, member states' national plans. It's a complete plan. It's a very good, well-organized plan. And I understand this, the African Union Commission has developed this agenda following consultation with many or multi-stakeholders at different levels. And thus, this Africa Agenda 2063 envisions an empowered African society that is driven by knowledge, innovation, and development. And education stands at the core of this vision, driving social and economic growth, and equipping African youth with the skills and competencies necessary to thrive in a rapidly evolving world. Next. If you look at this diagram, it shows that the commonalities between UN SDG 2030 and 2063. The first one is that SDG 2030 is for 15-year global action plan, whereas Agenda 2063 is 50-year continental integrative and transformative agenda. And when you look at the vision, both of them actually reflect on the peaceful kind of context, peaceful country, and free from poverty. And if you look at the focus areas, you'll see it's more or less the same: inclusive socio-economic development, peaceful societies, accountable institutions, environmental sustainability, climate change. So, and if you look at the right side, very quickly, it gives you a clear picture that SDG 2030, it has 17 goals, it has 169 targets. Whereas Africa Agenda, it has 7 aspirations and 20 goals. I won't go into detail, but it gives you a clear picture in which direction they're heading and helping the country, the African continent, to move forward. Can you move next?
Thanks, Robbie. You also have 2 minutes left.
Oh, great. So just quickly, it gives you, I just wanted to stress that it has 4. There are some priority actions that help to transform education in Africa, and some initiatives, projects, and partnership and collaboration. Can we move to the slide partnership and collaboration? Yeah.
This one?
Yeah, next one. Next. Okay, if you want to just okay, next. Just want to tell you, if they have 4 Agenda 2063, it has a clear plan of actions for education, and they have given 4 priorities how to address education, and there is what they call a continental strategy for education, and they have also strategy for Tibet and to drive education in Africa. But what is most important, and I want to stress in this, is besides other factors that really influence or drive education in Africa, what is most important is also partnership and collaboration. And you will see they have laid a lot of emphasis and collaboration across the board from national, at different levels, national, regional, continental, and global. And at the national level, we expect the collaboration between government organization, non-governmental organization, and private stakeholders. And it's also important, beside this, we have also networks. Can you go back very quickly? Yeah. We have different networks that has been helping to promote education in Africa, like ADA, AAU, African Virtual University, African Network, and GEEP Africa. Can you move to next slide? And as Cindy introduced in her address, that we have this event is being organized by Global Environmental Education and Partnership, which is a global initiative. It works with environmental practitioners, policymakers, researchers to drive or to promote environmental education. And its role is to create a vibrant and inclusive network designed to build capacities in countries around the world to strengthen environmental education, leading to a more and sustainable future. Next. I will end here. I just want to tell you that we have the GEEP Africa was launched in Glasgow when the COP26 was taking place. And we have a GEEP Africa it has a clear vision and mission and has 4 goals, which clearly gives you a direction to promote environmental education in Africa. And it is here to work with other instances existing in Africa to further support the agenda of environmental education or education for sustainable development. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ravi. I'm sorry that I had to rush you because this is quite an important conversation in terms of like how we position education within the Agenda 63. And this one thing that stuck with me is transforming education is the key to transforming Africa. So how we actually like work with education, how we reflect on education is going to be like crucial in terms of like transforming Africa to become a more just and a healthier and sustainable continent that we all live in. So Adedoyin, without further ado, I'm going to hand over to you. I'm also going to be quite strict on time, but I am going to give you 2 more minutes because Ravi did go into your time. So yeah, please, over to you. Adedoyin is the founder and executive director of Green Growth Africa, based out of Nigeria, but Adedoyin has a really good international footprint and does work across the world. So Adedoyin, over to you.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, we've seen the topic and I won't take your time to discuss more about the topic. Ravi has done a lot of work, given the background, and so I'll just proceed to the main issues that are specific to my area, because I'll try to manage time as much as possible. So basically, I'll be speaking on social justice, climate justice, within that whole framework of the agenda for today. And I'll be talking about the interlinkages between them and then recommendation. Yeah, first, Africa is at a crossroads. In fact, indeed, crossroads, because we already have our challenges over time. For instance, if you look at the screen, you see that in 1990, Asia, East Asia, and the Pacific had more than 50% of the global poor population in the world. Africa had only 15% in 1990. In 2015, Africa has not only done more than half, is already going to 60%. I mean, about 56%, whereas East Asia and Pacific reduced to 6%. So we already have poverty issues ongoing there. And a lot, currently as we speak, Africa is literally the global poverty capital of the world, because Africa houses more than 50% of the global poor people in the world. Now, we can replicate that. I mean, we can find that similar trend, rather, in almost all the sectors. I just give you an illustration of the food insecurity. 60%, more than 60% of Africa's population are living in extreme hunger. And then when you come to conflict and this displacement, there are more than 40 million people who are forcibly displaced by issues of conflict, war, and things like that. And because of those kind of issues, you have, I mean, of course, it also includes insecurity. You have about close to 10,000 schools, which account for about 2 million students who are out of school as of 2020. Now, if you go into healthcare, you realize that Africa accounts for more than 60%, about 70% of the global maternal death as of 2020. Now, if we travel across all the sectors, you're going to find issues, similar trends. So Africa already has its own social and economic development problem. But there is also a very systematic issue of justice, which is about social justice. There is a wide gap in, social and economic inequality. The combined wealth of top 3 billionaires on the continent surpasses the wealth and the resources available to 50%. That's more than 600 million people in Africa. Imagine 3 people having more than about 650 million people. We have structural inequality issue where there is gender disparity, particularly towards the female. And we have even the young people are not so much there. And that's intergenerational inequality, where we have Africa accounts for about 60% of Africa's population. But when you look at decision-making bodies, committees formed on African issues, you rarely find the youth. And when you find the youth somewhere, it's 1 out of 5, 1 out of 10. And somehow we see that, I'm a young person too anyway. So we see that as youth tokenism, so that they will not say that we did not include you. So there is intergenerational inequality as well. Now, in Africa as of today, you have more than 50% of the young people completely unemployed at different levels. Some are unemployed and discouraged. Some are inactive. Some are vulnerable. About 35% are vulnerable. Only 15% have an income generating activity as an employment. Now, the existing challenges that we already are into are there and now being compounded by issues of climate justice in Africa. Climate change, I think everybody knows about climate change, particularly in this time that COP28 is going on. Africa accounts for less than 3% of the global greenhouse gas emissions. It faces very, very disproportionate level of impact, more than other parts of the world, basically. You can see flood incident has increased tenfold between 1960 and today, accounting for more than 20,000 deaths. Nigeria, where I'm speaking from, is the most populous nation in Africa, is the most industrious, it has the highest GDP, yet accounts for less than 1% of the global GHG emissions. But we suffer a lot from the impact. Also, when you come into just bringing out a bit of some of the impact, drought between 1960 has led to more than 500,000 deaths on the continent. But according to UNEP, Africa needs more than $50 billion per annum for climate adaptation. But today, I doubt if we have $5 billion. So because of the impact of climate change further compounds the social and economic problem that we currently have. And when you look at it, in trying to respond to climate, because of the compounding effect, in trying to respond to climate, a lot of efforts, there has been strong emphasis globally on issues of environmental education. But as we speak, as of 2021, UNESCO found that 50% of the countries that are party to UNESCO, that's about more than 190 countries, 50% of them do not have the word climate change even mentioned in their curriculum. Less than 40% of the teachers are self-assured of even talking about climate change at all. And this is actually global. So when you look at it, we have this problem of climate change that is really compounding the existing issues, particularly in Africa. And we do not have systems. We do not have education, curricular programs that are really trying to address that headlong. Now, let's look a bit into the interlinkages. Climate justice and social justice are two sides of the same coin. Climate crisis exacerbates existing inequality, like I've mentioned, looking at social and economic inequality, intergenerational inequality, and structural inequality. Just to bring an example, because I'm trying to manage time, of structural inequality. If you go to rural communities in Africa, there are certain things that women do not have the right to. For instance, many of them don't have the right to land. You know, in Africa, we inherit a lot of things. Sometimes when they distribute property from their parents who have died, they don't give to women. And even in some communities, women do not even have the right to even buy the land themselves. So they don't have farmlands. They're not able to work. Now, that's already a structural inequality. Now, climate change comes in. These women are in charge of the kitchen. They take care of cooking based on African culture. Now, this, because of climate change, they have to travel far to get water because of droughts. And because they are using fuel wood to cook, they take in a lot of emissions that affect their respiratory system, so they die young. You realize that when you compare the lifespan, average lifespan of men to women, you find that women actually die earlier. I mean, they have shorter lifespan in Africa, in many African countries, than men. Just to give that illustration of how climate injustice and climate problem comes to compound the already challenges that we have on the continent. Of course, I've mentioned this before, but now looking at how climate comes in, those issues of income inequality, you find that vulnerable population, they face heightened sustainability to climate-induced loss and damage. Sorry, I'm trying to move on. Okay, now, so when we look at it, we realize that there are three major issues that we need to address if we want to address social justice and climate justice. One is the redistribution of resources. Redistribution of resources. We need to see how, for instance, issues about loss and damage, global adaptation fund and things like that. We need to make the polluting countries to pay, not as a charity, but as a duty. We need to pay to strengthen the Africa's climate resilience and also issues of shifting from renewable energy sources. I mean, non-renewables from fossil to renewable energy sources. Also, recognition of marginalized groups. Like I mentioned, women and youth are a lot really, really marginalized. So we need to acknowledge the existence and impact of climate change in Africa and how it compounds the existing inequality and aggregating data on inequality. And participation of individuals, giving room for more effective participation of climate-related decision-making, especially for sufficient representation. Probably you call it equitable representation. So those are three issues that we really need to address, looking at if you want to address social justice and climate justice, that's distribution of resources, recognition of marginalized group, and then now seeing how we can get these marginalized people to be active and included in our decision-making and resource distribution. Okay, now addressing all of this issue. Thank you so much. I'm seeing someone, Miriam, talking about corruption. That's also a very crucial issue. Now, Africa, looking at Africa and all the challenges that we have, we realize that the ultimate advantage of Africa over every other part of the world that it could leverage is the youth. And someone said that actually the solution to Africa's challenges lies in Africa. No one will come to develop our continent for us. No one will come to change the system for us. We've got to change it ourselves. And Africa, luckily, talking about young people, Africa has 60% of its population who are that are less than 25, and they are less than 25 under 25 years. You know, currently as we speak, Africa has about 59.9. You know, compared to Europe, compared to North America, and by 2050, Africa will have more than 60% of the whole total youth population in the world. But how do we, this demography provides a lot of advantage for us to really maximize the capacity of the youth. I mean, the potential rather, because I like to separate the word potential from capacity. You know, potential becomes capacity when you have added value to it. So how do we maximize this potential to address social and economic issues that we're already facing, while also ensuring that we are responding to climate issue in an integrated manner? So ways forward, I'm trying to round up as soon as possible.
You've got 2 minutes at a doyen. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. I think I'm doing well with time. Now, one, investing in esteem. What do you mean by esteem? Environment, looking at environment integrated into science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics for climate education. So we're not just teaching because oftentimes when we talk about climate education, everybody think about only climate. But I often say that the reason why we are addressing the climate is not actually because anybody loves the climate, but because climate is affecting our livelihoods, social and economic issues. And also that the causes of climate problem are not even environmental problems, actually. They are actually social and economic problems. So I believe that the solution, when we are designing a solution, it should be also integrated into social and economic pillar. Basically that. So new knowledge will be required, not only in Africa, all over the world. The green transition is really changing development dynamics. And we really need to, Africa needs to invest a lot towards the green transition, looking at building the capacity of young people who can provide solutions, social and economic solutions, development solutions that integrate the three pillars of development, such that Africa will have capacity not only to champion and drive its own path to sustainability, but also it can create, it can, because leverage its population when empowered to drive the global transition. And if we're going to do this, we need pedagogy change. Basically, there is a theory which talks about all learning is relearning. Now, even within the academia, you realize that with all the research that has been done, the truth remains that we still don't know the path in full that will lead us to green transition, to the green world that we're talking about, because a lot of things are changing. Now, if Africa is going to have competitive advantage in this transition, then there needs to be continuous and dynamic education system, not the ones we have in many places where the curriculum used in 1980 is still what they used to use in the university. Because even now, new knowledge can come and then we try to say, oh, we adjust our syllabus today. What about next year? By next year, a lot of things should have emerged. Knowledge are emerging, challenges are getting more elaborate, and then people are getting more understanding about the problem we have. So they are changing and adapting the knowledge system that we have. So Africa needs to not only change, adjust curriculum now or adapt them now, but also develop them in a very dynamic way, such that we can always adapt with time. Let me see. And key issues about, I would have spoken about experiential learning, but I can skip that. Now, when we're designing education, environmental education curriculum to respond to these challenges, to prepare Africa and place us where we really are able to address our challenges. Four key things are very important according to the UNESCO report: that the education system must be relevant, must be engaging, and that's issue about experiential learning, engaging the students, and it must be effective and learner-centric. Unfortunately, many of the education systems we have around the world, particularly in developing nations, are teacher-centric. But we need to have a learning system that place the learners at the center and to take leadership, where the teachers only provide coordination and they give direction. Let me see. And
10 seconds, Adedoyin.
Okay, 4 key principles about designing such a curriculum that can address all those 4 points. 1, critical thinking. We must drive creativity. We have drive collaboration and also communication in designing such education system that can respond to those challenges. I think I stop here, and in case there are questions, you may let me know. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Adedoyin. There's some really thought-provoking statistics in your presentation, and I think that's something that, as GEEP Africa, we need to engage further, and all the participants in here, because there's some really staggering statistics that we actually need to unpack a whole lot further. The one thing that you said that really stuck out to me is Africa is the global poverty capital of the world. And if you remember, you once said to me, Africa is too rich to be so poor. So how do we turn that around? So thanks for that, Adedoyin, and I really hope that people will engage with you about this presentation. Next, we're going to slowly shift into a climate, social, digital justice conversation with Kerry. Kerry is our a coastal programs manager in South Africa for the Wildlife and Environment Society, and has a very keen interest in technology and artificial intelligence and the kind of like pros, cons, and the different difficult conversations that we need to have about that. So Kerry, over to you.
Thank you so much, Cindy, and hello to everybody. It's really wonderful to be here, and I'm just excited to have the opportunity to talk about this concept of AI, which is a hot topic, and how it links to the discussions that the presentations that we've just listened to, the different frameworks, the different the concepts of social justice, climate justice. So let me just click through. So we've been talking about climate justice. I think we all understand that climate justice equals social justice. It's the same thing. So when I refer to climate justice, I'm talking about social justice as well. And I think there are three clear pathways that have a role to play in delivering climate justice in Africa, this being technology, finance, and capacity building. So these three pathways, they're underpinned obviously by governance structures, and these are our policies and our frameworks, both on a state level and also on the level of the AU that we've been introduced to. I'm going to be focusing on the technology side of things and the AI side of things. We've already heard in the presentations that, you know, when we talk about climate justice, social justice, we have to think about things, we have to think about the concept of access, who has access to the technology, to the services, how is the technology used, and what kind of innovations can be sparked out of this technology. So I want to bring in the concept of digital justice. I'm sure some of you have also heard of another way of framing it is the digital rights. And I think in the same way, digital justice can't be divorced from climate justice, from social justice. And we're going to delve into that a little bit deeper. So I came across these framing questions in an article that I read, and I just thought these are the kind of questions we should always hold in our heads when we are talking about the deployment and the implementation of technology in the context of social justice, climate justice, and transforming education as well. We need to think about who is developing this technology, for whom, and for what, and with what data. We also need to think about who profits from this technology. And we also want to ask the question of who holds sovereignty and ownership rights to the data, and what is at stake, and for whom in the resulting applications of this technology. And essentially, we need to ask ourselves, does this technology reinforce an extractive economic system, or do these systems contribute to possibilities for environmental and climate justice? So I think it's just important for us to keep these questions in the back of our minds. I'm sure you all are very aware of how this topic of AI is really just such a hot topic at the moment. Everyone's talking about it. And we do like to sort of frame it as this amazing cure for all of our problems. But we need to just bear in mind that there's a bigger picture involved. So just to bring us into the African context, when I was doing all my research and preparing for this presentation, I came across this very recent event that took place in Addis Ababa in November, where our African leaders came together for an ICT conference, and the AU Commissioner for Infrastructure and Communication sums up the African perspective when it comes to technology and the deployment of technology. And Dr. Amani Abu Zaid, she says technology should augment human capabilities, not replace them. And I think that is also very important for us to bear in mind. We don't want this technology or this AI to replace us. Our focus is on using technology to solve real problems that Africans face, from access to education and health services to financial inclusion. Technologies like mobile money, e-commerce, and e-learning have the potential to create new opportunities if developed with the needs of African users in mind. So I thought that was really great. You know, just this whole notion of African-centric development of technology. Edwin also said it very nicely that no one's going to solve our problems except ourselves. So we need to be at the forefront of that. This is just I'm sure there are many more frameworks and policies that speak to the digital transformation in the African context. We were introduced to Agenda 2063 in the beginning and the aspirations there. But this is also just to show you that there's a number of strategies that are being developed, overseen by the African Union, and these policies and frameworks are guiding the digital transformation in Africa. So let's talk about artificial intelligence and how the application of artificial intelligence can support the transformation of education in the African context. So I'm linking these applications to some of the aspirations that we were introduced to in the Agenda 2063. So in the context of transformative education for sustainable development, we have that aspiration in Africa with development led by knowledgeable, skilled, and innovative citizens. So we know that artificial intelligence can play a transformative role in education by enabling personalized learning experiences. So I think this is, you know, we're starting to see this coming through, or this idea coming through of an AI tutor, an AI mentor, and also this idea of adaptive learning platform. So this is a platform that will take feedback from from the data that you feed it, and it will adapt your own personalized learning experience. And this also speaks to the concept of access. You know, if you think about people living with disabilities and how do they access education, AI has the potential to really unlock opportunities for people with disabilities to access quality education. I'm giving some examples of how this AI is being deployed in different countries. So an example in South Africa is we've got a group of private schools. It's called Advitech. And in fact, WESA has a relationship with this group of schools through the Eco Schools program. But Advitech is really leading the way in recently deploying a customized platform that they're rolling out within their schools. It's called AdviLearn. And this platform provides personalized learning paths using adaptive technology to deliver data-driven insights and learning analytics. So the students at these schools have a unique learning experience while constantly improving their understanding in core areas. So it's quite exciting. In the context of inclusive and sustainable economic growth, so this links to a prosperous Africa based on inclusive growth and sustainable development. We can integrate AI into education, and this can potentially provide inclusive and equitable access to quality learning resources. So I think Edwin mentioned this, that there is this definitely inequality when it comes to access to quality learning resources. Edwin also spoke about outdated curricula. We also heard about the decline in trained teachers. So there is the potential for AI to bridge that gap through this concept of virtual classrooms, AI-driven tutoring systems, online educational platforms that can provide these opportunities, and in that way aligning with this goal of inclusive growth. My example this is really something I encourage you guys to look up. This is an app that was created by two young South African guys who, through their own experience, were not accessing quality education, and they developed this AI-driven data-free application. That means you can access, you don't need to have data on your phone to access it. Learners can download past papers, study guides, and now with the AI integration, there's a bot that you can ask questions to help you when you get stuck. And there are thousands of learners using this app now, so that's very exciting. That's Fundamate. Check it out. In the context of youth empowerment for sustainable development, this is linking to the aspiration in Africa whose development is people-driven, relying on the potential offered by people, especially its women and youth. So this was also highlighted by Ravi. And, you know, this is really about, you know, through the access to relevant and up-to-date information. This is talking to providing relevant skills for the future. We acknowledge that things are changing so fast. The employment landscape, the labor landscape, it's all changing so fast that digital skills are going to become more and more important. And we're starting to see that online courses, coding boot camps, virtual mentorship programs, these AI-driven technologies are enabling African youth to acquire in-demand skills such as data science, machine learning, robotics, programming, and green technologies. And this positions them as valuable contributors to the digital economy. My example, this is now moving out of South Africa, is this really wonderful organization called the Youth Future Lab. They're based in Kenya. And this is an organization that's committed to empowering Kenya's youth with cutting-edge technologies. They recognize the transformative impact of AI, and they're actively encouraging youth to venture into this domain, and they provide mentorship programs, training workshops, and access to AI resources. So very exciting developments happening there.
Kerry, 2 minutes.
Got it. Ethical AI in education. This is linking to the aspiration of an Africa with strong cultural identity, common heritage, shared values, and ethics. So this is really just to emphasize that we need to integrate AI in an ethical way and in alignment with the cultural values. Ethical AI frameworks can be incorporated into educational systems, ensuring that the technology respects the cultural identities and ethical principles. And this resonates with the agenda's emphasis on shared values and ethics. My example is the African AI Ethics Alliance. This is a collective of African AI researchers and innovators dedicated to advancing ethical AI practices across the continent. You can check them out. Lifelong learning, I will whiz through this, but I think Adwin also made mention to this, is that in this context of rapidly changing information, we need to be able to promote lifelong learning and innovation through those types of skills that Adwin referred to as well. And AI can provide an environment for adaptive learning, lifelong learning, and innovation. Just very quickly, I want to touch on some of the challenges. I think all of you have heard of this concept of the digital divide. This is something that is a reality that we really need to accept and face and try to find solutions to. The digital divide, it's rooted in issues such as inadequate infrastructure, unaffordability, and limited digital skills. We can also link this to existing inequalities being further induced or reinforced by AI-based technologies, where their design itself, the algorithm, might be biased. And that way we deepen existing biases. And we have to be cognizant of the fact that if the development of AI is not equal between the various regions within Africa, the digital divide could become more tangible in the poorest societies. We also need to make note that African data currently is not so accessible or is somewhat limited. And if we want to create digital technology, AI technology that aligns with our cultural values and our visions, we need to create it based on African data. There is this fear of job losses induced by AI technology replacing humans. That I think is a real concern, and we need to then make sure that we upskill and train people into these new kind of jobs that are coming. I think, I'm quite concerned about this concept of AI safety. The speed of which AI is now being deployed into the public domain, as well as the complexity around it, makes it very difficult to regulate. We also need a lot of coordination between countries, nations, east, west, north, south, to agree on the regulations as well. And that is very challenging. There is also an environmental cost to AI. AI doesn't sit in the cloud. It actually has a physical impact on the environment. You have to think about the data centers and the environmental cost of a data center, the amount of water, the amount of energy that keeps your cloud going. So we do need to keep these things in mind. And just to finally wrap up, we do need to embrace this technology, and it can play an incredibly important role in the transformation of Africa. However, we do need to weigh up the opportunities against the challenges and the risks. However, I think we agree that a balanced approach is needed in harnessing AI in the service of delivering climate and social justice in Africa. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Kerry. I think that's a conversation that needs to keep happening, because like you say, it's happening pretty fast. You know, AI, there's so many new AI applications that gets launched every single day. I think you once told me a ridiculous figure in terms of like how many applications get launched in a day or a month or something. But at the same time, it is happening, and how do we actually find that balance? So what I really liked about this digital transformation, actually like keeping the needs of African users in mind, and that ethical, cultural, and value systems from an African perspective is actually like deployed when these applications are made. And I was at COP last week, and I actually saw that African data was also a priority. So how do we actually like get more data out of Africa for climate solutions, things like AI? So that's also an important development, or an important not consequence, but something that we always have to keep at the back of our mind. Like, how are these algorithms and stuff created if there is not a lot of African data actually being pushed into those algorithms? So thanks, Kerry. That's a really, really insightful presentation. And in the kind of like spirit of having a learning environment and having a learning network, I would like to ask all of our participants to either scan this QR code or go to menti.com and put in that particular code. And let's look at, because that's one of the questions was like, how can more collaboration and coordination with the GEEP Africa Hub happen? And one of the kind of like main things that the GEEP Africa Hub is set up to do is to look at capacity building and professional development within the African continent and within the environmental education and ESD space, to ensure that we actually like bring those possibilities and potential that Adedoyin was speaking about to life. So if you just scan this with your cell phone, or just type in on your cell phone, and then essentially go to like menti.com, and the code to reach or to actually unlock the one question, to put your answers in and to capture your thoughts, is 6350916. And while all of you are doing that, what I would like to do is actually open up the floor for some comments and questions. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen for now, so I can also look at the questions that has already come through. But please feel free to add more questions. And I am going to ask Judy to also help me with all of the questions on the chat. Judy, thank you. I've already received a few of the questions. And one of them from Ruby is, how can Africa create and open more direct networks and relationships with Caribbean islands? Thank you so much, Ruby, for that question. And maybe, Ravi, I'll put this question to you as you were speaking about the Africa agenda, and just I'll open it to all the panelists, but let's start with Ravi to look at more direct networks and relationships with Caribbean islands.
I think there are different ways to do it. It all depends what is the interest for this network. If the interest of this network is on education, we have, for example, different areas like you have AAU, African universities, you have virtual universities that they can fit. But if it is something that relates to environmental education, we have the South African environmental education for Southern Africa. This is a good network to be connected. But otherwise, we also have the Regional Center of Expertise in Africa that can be connected. We also have the GEEP Africa, which is now open, and we want to collaborate. We want to link up with other instances, and we would be more than happy to network with the Caribbean network. We will be happy with this. Yeah.
Yeah, and there are also lots of oceanic alliances that and I know the Caribbean is a lot further from us, but there's definitely possibilities through, for example, the GEEP Global, GEEP Africa. We've got the Asia Pacific hub as well. So this is, Ruby, this is kind of the start of us all trying to connect with each other, have a network of networks around the world that can actually work together to strengthen environmental education around the world that would lead to a more climate just, socially just, and economic just world for, particularly in my opinion, marginalized countries or countries that are disproportionately affected by the climate crisis. I would encourage you to connect to the network, and then also look at how we can partner more once you're in the network. So Judy, I'm going to read these couple of questions that you sent to me, but also just draw my attention to others as you see them. Another question is, how can African education systems influence and improve education outcomes for those with special needs in education? Kerry and Adedoyin, I'm going to come to both of you to help us answer that question. Adedoyin, maybe first to you, and then I'll go to Kerry.
Yeah, thank you so much. I actually saw the question, and I think that though our focus here is more about ESD, but it also applies. But it's a whole of society problem, particularly in Africa. For instance, just a very simple instance, if you go to many of the developed world, you'll find that there is, on the road, when they construct road, there is a path that they create for people that are walking. There are paths for bicycle in some countries. But in Africa, you just find one simple thing. When you see a staircase in a train station, you immediately, no matter how small the staircase is, you immediately see elevator. Apart from elevator, you see a path where those that are being wheeled can be wheeled even across the stairs, not normal stairs. So there is a high level of social injustice on the continent. And it's more at the policy level. Of course, the part that we can play is to advocate as much as we can. But again, until we become policymakers, we can only change it at our corner and at our level. And of course, I encourage that. So we try to be more inclusive as we are, do the little we can, advocate more until we're able to get the government's attention to actually change the system.
Yeah, and I think for me, the importance is also not seeing it as an extra afterwards, but as we kind of create systems, create infrastructure.
Inclusive, yeah.
Exactly. Kerry, do you want to add something to that?
Well, I mentioned it briefly in my presentation, but I do think that AI actually has a really amazing role to play in terms of access for people with disabilities, because as long as they've got, I suppose, access to a cell phone and internet, that is always a caveat. But there's incredible applications now, text to speech, for blind people. And if you are in a wheelchair, if you've got your school in your pocket, on your cell phone, I mean, obviously we still need people, I think that is the thing. We still need to socialize. But I really do think that AI can play a very amazing role to increase access to quality education and different kinds of resources and breaking down some barriers.
Yeah, important barriers that's actually hindering transformation on an inclusive scale. And I'm interested to see like how, as AI develops further, how it becomes more inclusive. But you've already mentioned a lot of examples, which are really great. The next question I want to pose to Ravi, particularly, and to what extent are the strategic plans of African universities aligned to the African Agenda 2063?
To be very honest, this is a very difficult question to attend, in the sense that we have been looking for some report or papers working, especially doing some extensive study to what extent universities are really aligned with the continental strategy on environmental education, on education. But I have not come across. But I presume some universities are doing very well, like University of Botswana, University of South Africa, University of KwaZulu-Natal, as far as I know, because I've been working with them. They are trying to align with the African agenda. This is I know, but for sure I don't have all the information in hand to give a concrete answer for this. But probably down the line, I have to look for it.
Yeah, and I think an important partnership that came out of UNESCO last year is the Greening Education Partnership, where they have these 4 pillars looking at greening education, greening curriculum, greening teacher professional development, and then greening youth and communities. And the first pillar, speaking around greening education, there's a huge focus now put on universities, TVET colleges, and how their curriculums need to like become more inclusive of these national, continental, and global agendas, because that's really where transformation could truly happen, is like through a university level, and particularly also teacher colleges. So if people are studying to become teachers, how do we incorporate these kind of policies into their training at university level? But that's a really important conversation to have around how universities actually better align to some of the important agendas, policies that are currently coming out of each of the African continents. Each of the African countries. And recently, the Southern African region launched its ESD plan. So it's called Transforming Education for Sustainable Development in Southern Africa. And a huge focus there is also about higher education and training. So I think it's been lacking for the last couple of years, but there's now a spotlight on it because of the importance of higher education and training. Thank you so much for that question. I'm not
just want to add,
go for it, Robbie.
Yeah, just wanted to add that in the COP28 there is a special focus on greening education, and I understand the ministers who are attending this COP28, most of them are giving an update of what is happening in their own countries, and I know many ministers from African continent are attending this. So that's a good thing that is happening, and our universities are really trying to, as you said rightly, to green the education. Thank you.
Thank you, Ravi. A question from Patrick is, great presentation to all the presenters. I agree. And then just, are there ways to collaborate and coordinate with GEEP Africa Hub? Yes, 100%. I'm going to ask one of our NAAWE staff members to like put a link so that everyone on the webinar can sign up to the GEEP global discussion groups and newsletters. And that's really how we actually like, you know, move these conversations forward, and how we are going to like start collaborations with each other. I think all the speakers spoke about, you know, African solutions by African people for the African continent. And I think if we do that and include bilateral partnerships and collaborations, our efforts can just get stronger and stronger. So I'm going to ask either Judy or Madeline or Kerry to like, you know, post some of those websites and links so that people can get access to the right information and the right access to specific connections that we can make. Those are some of the questions that I have, and I just want to check some of the chat. And I see some lots and lots of comments, and this is really what the GEEP Global and GEEP Africa hubs are all about. To like look at how do we learn better from each other, how do we create this collective network of expertise and experience to make sure that particularly on the African continent we can collaboratively work towards better solutions for the African continent and the multitude of problems and challenges that we face. For now, I'm going to hand over to MJ to close the webinar for us. I am going to go through all of the questions. We will kind of like have a summary of the webinar, and we'll send it to everybody who has registered for it. But I am conscious of time and thankful that you've actually given up your afternoon to join us for this very important conversation. I wish I could give all the other speakers another 15 minutes to delve deeper into their topics, and it's a note that we'll take forward as we plan more GEEP Africa webinars for next year. So MJ, I'm going to hand over to you to just close the webinar, and I'll do a final thank you to everyone before all of our participants drop off. I just want to make a special note to our global GEEP partners. I see we've got some members from our Asia Pacific group, and particularly Taiwan, on the call as well. So great to have you, and I hope that we can also join some of your webinars as they happen. MJ, over to you.
Okay, thank you, Judy. Thank you, Cindy, for coordinating this and facilitating it so well. And then thanks to the participants. Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you very much for participating. Thank you to the presenters for these exciting discussions. I know Cindy has already mentioned that she wished you could extend time. I wish you could extend time so that we can get the more insight. I know they did a lot of presentation, but they had small or little time to do their presentations. But this is a learning curve. I hope we will create more time to extend the presentations. All the presentations as they were presented, you could feel that perhaps all this time could have been dedicated to one presenter, but unfortunately, because of time, that is what we could afford now. Let me thank them for the effort that they have made. Thank them for being able to synthesize and give us all this exciting information, particularly the provoking or thought-provoking questions. There are quite a number of them. Right from the beginning, there were a number of questions. In the interest of time, I will not repeat those. But I liked what was cutting across, something like access to quality education. That is very, very important. I saw that coming actually through. And this is a big challenge. The other thing that we have to note there is like what Adodoni has mentioned, the youthfulness of Africa, which has the potential for a futuristic kind of policy development. That's very, very important. And then the last one on artificial intelligence, that's very, very important. Again, a question of access is very, very important. Access to data is very, very important. We know we have limited, even where it is, there are some restrictions. It's not actually easy to access that. So these are the areas that we could later on perhaps unpack slowly, time by time, so that we actually get the benefit from all these presentations. And then I would like also to thank Judy and the NAAWE staff who are behind there doing quite a good job and who made it possible for us to get to this far. Thanks very much. And then thanks to GEEP Global, the Secretariat in particular, if you still go back to Judy. I think just to remind, particularly those who are new, GEEP Africa is part of the GEEP Global. GEEP Global aims at setting up networks across the continent. And this is one of the networks that is newly formed. And then we encourage you to join. We encourage you to recruit more people to join us. Please follow all of the links so that we get connected, and then a follow up to this discussion so that you get hooked, you get connected. We are excited about your attendance. We want to know where you are. You want to know what you are doing. We want you to be part of GEEP Africa Hub. And then next year, there will be more exciting talks such as this one. Thanks to everyone. Thanks for the insights. Thanks for your participation, for creating time to be with us. Thanks to the facilitator, Cindy. Thanks to Judy and the staff. Thanks to the presenters. Thanks to all of you who managed to actually stay on until now, even those who had some engagement and then exited earlier on. I would say a big thanks to everyone. Please recruit more to join GEEP Africa. Thank you, Cindy.
Thank you so much, MJ. And thanks, everyone. We now declare the webinar closed. So thank you, everyone. And please, can I just ask all the presenters and the NAAWE team to stay on for 5 minutes. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. And see you at the next webinar.